All right, so let's get started. Welcome to this presentation. Thank you for joining. I'm going to speak about touching your NetBSD if you have one, and it's not a problem, it's not a big deal otherwise, because as you're going to see, it should be no big deal to get this working on more systems. So I'm Pierre Pronchery. I'm a NetBSD developer now for a few months, so I even have an address at netbsd.org at the foundation. When I prepared these slides, I wanted to do a clever joke with the first one about background information. But the thing is, after last night, I don't want to speak about it anymore. So I just speak about myself, not that I look much better over here. But so yeah, I'm freelance, consulting, security mostly. I also love to work on embedded systems, OS dev in general. NetBSD developer for short now, and I'm based in Berlin, although I'm French, as you may notice. So I don't have the slides at the same time here, so I'll try to follow. Okay, so what are we going to speak about? I'm going to first explain how I came to doing this. So the concept behind it, the project I've been running for a while now. A few words about NetBSD that you already know anyway. So these steps were with the Openmoko Freerunner, which was an open hardware phone. I have a sample here if you would like to have a look. So I can even pass it around. You can have a look. You can turn it on, and it should just boot. Maybe the battery is not really well charged, but we'll see to that. It shouldn't be a big deal. And I will speak about the contest I won, a few months ago. And finally, I will have the demo, explain the technical details behind everything, and like maybe see what the future may bring. Okay, so about DeforaOS now. So it's an open source project. I've been starting in 2005. I was just getting frustrated at school because I was going there with my laptop, going back home, and of course my chat logs weren't synchronized, and it was just driving me crazy, because studying was more about like catching up on chat logs than anything else. You learn more stuff this way anyway. No, I'm just kidding. But basically, I wanted to have this not just for IRC chat logs, but for like regular computing all the time. So to have it ubiquitous and seamless, to be able to just go anywhere, whatever network I'm connected to, have access to my data at home securely, be it on my laptop, on my phone, on my desktop, whatever. And possibly even the ability to resume programs. So it was all before virtualization happened, and now it's sort of possible with this, but it's still very heavy in my opinion, and I think we should work on a more simple solution, so to speak. Depends on your point of view anyway. So the project itself is divided into 3 parts. They're not all equally well developed right now, but of course I would like it to be self-hosted, just for the kicks. The core of the idea is essentially a distributed framework, which is, again, like RPC, so I'm doing my own system for this, trying to make it versatile, so defining some interfaces and services for the system. And the desktop environment is what I'm going to show here the most. It's also the most advanced part, and the idea is to interconnect these 3 parts as they mature, and the next step for me is to be able to integrate the framework inside the desktop. So I'm doing the desktop so that I can easily know how the code is architected and have directly some visual feedback from what I'm doing under the hood. So anyway, I mean it to be portable, so I'm not limiting myself to my own stuff. It works on BSD, Linux, you name it. And if it doesn't, just tell me, and I will be glad to have a look. Yeah. So NetBSD is out. That's great news. So it's been only since last week that we have a new stable release, and most of what I'm going to show is part of this release actually, already. So that's also good to know. So NetBSD itself, I discovered it when I was studying, about the same time that I was frustrated with these chat logs. And so I got an assignment, which was install and network 3 different operating systems together, share user authentication, so like have a single password everywhere, mount some the home folders and everything, and to make it equally difficult for everyone, one of these 3 systems had to be NetBSD 2. Because of course, by its simplicity and like maybe fewer developers at some point, the system was more difficult to catch for people who did not quite yet grasp Unix fully, and it was a great assignment for students. But it was funny enough that I liked it anyway, and I've been using it daily since version 3. So it's really a personal preference. So I usually focus on NetBSD with my stuff, but it's not my sole focus. So NetBSD on tablets, specifically, if I could skip to that slide, yes, is not something new. There's been other devices before that have been supported, including with the touchscreen, like the Sharp Zorus, of which I have one here. So it's a pretty small device. The screen rotates like this, and it becomes a tablet. And of course, you have a stylus, and you can just interact. And I don't have the video here inside my slides, just a screenshot, but it basically boots all the way to X, and the video boots LXDE in the end. So it doesn't have really a user interface in base and in the packages that's really sought directly for finger-based interaction or stylus-based interaction, but it still works pretty well. And however, there is no driver for the modern hardware. So it works on Zorus and on another couple devices, mostly ARM-based, but there was no driver until now. So I wrote my own, but I'm going to expand more on this in a few slides. And first, go a bit back in time and quickly explain how I came to doing this. So I was working for a while on the Openmoko Freerunner, which was, depending on how you see things, also an open source phone. It's the one that I've been giving already. So the hardware is open source. The software was open source, but there was a lot of shuffling around between distributions. So what happened is I was working with Bearstech. It's a hosting company in France on our own distribution, but it was Debian-based. And we basically took what the Openmoko project abandoned for a while, which was called, how was it called? It was based on GNOME Mobile at some point, sort of. Anyway. And after the end of support for us for the Freerunner, when we moved on to some other devices, I just took my existing desktop environment and I tried to see if I could fit it on embedded platforms. And actually it worked quite well. I just removed the menu bars, made the icons bigger, and it was fairly simple, of course, because it was also little code at the time, and it was okay. And I even ported this distribution on two different phones, so on a Debian base. So one was the HTC Touch Pro, which very handily has a keyboard that was great for debugging. So this one boots first into Windows, and there is another bootloader which boots into Linux. I think some people have managed to get it directly booting, but it's a bit dangerous, and I don't want to brick my phone. And the other device where I've ported Defora is the Nokia 900. And it's also really nice, got a keyboard, and better resolution, more modern hardware, 3G support. I think this one does too. But yeah, it's pretty cool. After that, I heard about the AFULTab contest. And it's about the AFUL, a French user group, not limited to Linux, thankfully, launched a contest end of last year. And the aim was to provide a tablet, 100% open source. Well, not the hardware this time, but at least the software stack. And there were just a few guidelines. So the screen had to be at least 10 inches diagonal, 6 hours battery life, networking support, and that was pretty much it. And between the lines, it said it would be nice to have some sort of disruptive approach, to bring up something new instead of just, taking GNOME and installing it there, and then it's unusable with the screen, with the finger. So, yeah, I decided to try that out. I, by chance, had a Lenovo ID pad around, which was looking a lot like the Zorus, just a bit bigger, a regular laptop, but with a touch screen, which rotated and could be turned into a tablet. So I used that in the first phase to be able to see if the concept would work, and I presented at FOSDEM 2012 back in February this year inside the BSD dev room, and I had therefore the first functional demonstration with the touchscreen driver, which I'm also using on this device. It's the same. It's connecting to the USB HID bus, and however, it still required many patches to be put inside the main system to fully work. The screen resolution was limited. It was even actually a lot of juggling at the day of the conference to get everything working properly. For the records, like the resolution on the beamer was not the same as on the screen. And I had calibrated the screen for the resolution of the screen, obviously. And then I wanted to do a presentation with the laptop. And when I was clicking, it was not the same as on screen. So it was like last minute rush to get my laptop. But anyway, the point was I had not received proper tablet hardware yet. And here, now I do. So at the time of the presentation at FOSDEM, the interface was looking like this. So basically, a menu here, the virtual keyboard can be triggered here, some applications running. This applet, because this is all modular, you can choose whatever you put inside, is basically listing the applications in order of last use. So you can, if you want to cycle between 3 applications, you just keep clicking here and it will cycle, or between the last 4, last 5, because everything shifts. And this was actually the default interface on this device, and I just emulated it for fun to see if it was usable also on a bigger screen. And so that's basically how it looked like. Finally, I received the EuroBSDcon hardware. So it's right here for everyone to see. The picture is a bit small, but basically, it's x86 based, 1.6 gigahertz, 1 gig of RAM, a slightly bigger screen than what I had at FOSDEM, which is also quite nice. It has Wi-Fi, 3G, and GPS on the same chip. Bluetooth, 2 USB ports, which is also very useful for debugging, for plugging whichever other devices. Internal camera, and 32 gigs of internal storage. So that's really plenty of space for playing around. And a few months later, therefore, I received the EuroBSDcon and co-won the contest, Yoo-hoo again, in May 2012. I released documentation for this, which is on my professional website. Here, the link is broken because of OpenOffice. Yeah, I will not expand on this. But another cool thing is that I became a NetBSD developer while doing this, from my contributions for the touchscreen driver, some patches for the mouse driver in X11, and so on. And one of my first commits was to break the USB keyboard driver. That wasn't nice. I'm sorry about that. Hopefully, it was just a few minutes range, and I think nobody actually triggered it. And it would have been really tricky to actually break the driver. I mean, you had to click on some special keys very fast. And yeah, this was OK. Now I'm always asking first. So at the time of the contest, I still had issues with the screen resolution, but I got the webcam to work. The interface was looking almost exactly the same. And so that's basically what it was. So now, to what I really want to show you now, not my other car. OK, I don't own one, but it's nice to dream. So the concept is, under the hood, as I said, NetBSD kernel-based system. All the packages are inside package source. Some of them are inside the WIP repository, work in progress, but that's not a big deal. It's really easy to add that part. So the interface defaults to the DeforaOS desktop, and the aim is to make it a real tablet experience with finger-based interaction and to look nice. And so here is how I'm trying to make this happen. Oh, that was the slide I wanted to show, actually. But that's OK. And so today, it looks a bit more like that. So there is the virtual keyboard, which is a bit nicer. In theory, I can send SMS with the 3G modem. I have a few applications installed. And as you can see, the operator here, I took this screenshot yesterday in my hotel room. It shows I'm running. It shows I'm on the 3G network, the CPU frequency, some other useful information, and so on. And the cool part is it boots in just 45 seconds. And I'm going to show it now to you. So the first thing you will see is actually the bootloader. So it's NetBSD, if you can see it from here. But I have other screenshot there. So I could even shorten the boot time by 5 seconds because here the default is to wait 5 seconds, and obviously you cannot change which system, which way I want to boot. So right now it's loading the kernel. Yeah, flipping it. So this is the boring splash screen, which you can also see above, but I don't have 3 arms yet. And after a few seconds, it should actually ask me for my pin code, which should happen like in 3, 2, 1 now. Yes, I love when demos work. It's not so often. I will not show you my code. Security. I will not show you this bug, which happens sometimes. Just bear with me, yes. Okay, so here is the interface live, and it reacts, it does stuff. Wow. Okay, so this was about the bootloader. So basically the splash screen now, you need a JPEG file, not progressive. So if you use GIMP, you just untick this box or make sure it is. You can enable silent boot, which looks also nicer, not for debugging, but for end users. And of course, you can greet your users. And the thing is here, the important part is the visa, the screen resolution, and the file name. And it should just work. So that's pretty neat. So after that, instant use for a very subjective version of instant is 45 seconds. I used GDM to auto-login. It can be configured with the user interface directly. You just get root and hit the menu, configure, blah. And you choose which user it's defaulting to. Otherwise, you can also do it in GDM custom.conf, where the configuration files are. After that, it's time to calibrate the screen, because otherwise you're basically screwed, because nothing reacts or it does whatever else. It goes this way. One part that is not right now in the base system is dispatch for WS cons, which I have to push again a bit harder, maybe, or rewrite a bit. I don't know. It's not so elegant in parts. But basically, I extended WS cons control to add the calibration values, which already existed in the kernel. This framework already exists. I'm just interfacing to it. And you can input a series of samples here, which will help with the calibration. And the rest is what's already existing, like the repeat buttons and everything. So this is my proper tool for calibration, although it would be much nicer to have something with like 4 points, the regular stuff, and have it just done at first boot or whatever. That would be, of course, much better. Okay, another very good thing to know is that there is a specification online for these touchscreen devices, and they are not connected exactly the same way. There are different modes of operation. One is mouse emulation, where the BIOS emulates a regular mouse instead of being absolute coordinates. And sometimes it reports on different USB endpoints, and it's conflicting. So in Windows, you have nice drivers which know which events to listen to, but of course, here it's not really applying. So it's a lot better to use USB HID control in some cases to force the device inside mode 2, where it's only sending interrupts, events for absolute coordinates, because it's much more useful than having to deal with relative when you don't know the resolution and so on. So then it comes down to X11. Xorg, so the mouse driver required a couple patches, but now I think it's all integrated, both in base and in package source. It needs more work though, because if I would rotate the screen right now, the coordinates would be wrong. It's a bit sad because it looks quite nice in portrait mode, but I cannot show it right now because I would have to like reboot it or something. After that, you can tweak the GTK settings to make it nicer. Like I use bigger fonts. I just check what is the real dpi value of the screen by measuring, and then I just force it inside the xdefault. Well, here I didn't fully check, but I think it's about that size. And with that, you have fonts which really look sort of okay, even if you're a bit from the distance. That's quite nice. You can also tweak the icon sizes and the size of the panel. Am I on the right side? Yes. The size of the panel is determined by the GTK values. So you just choose if it should be a small panel or a big one, and it will choose values from here, and it's going to be coherent with the rest of the interface if you want it to. There is also a touchscreen mode inside GTK explicitly, but it doesn't do much. As far as I know, it's just that if the cursor is positioned on a place where there should be a tooltip, it just doesn't display the tooltip because the cursor is not meant to be displayed. So it's just ignoring it. So basically, it's mostly disabling stuff as far as I know. However, one cool thing is to use the libgtk stylus as a module, and it emulates the third button. You just keep your finger pressed on a given spot without moving it, and it will trigger a third click. Some of the behavior is not absolutely correct. Like it will still generate a single click before a regular one, but that's usually quite okay, and you can modify the interface to not react directly. It needs changes to the code of the application itself, which is not nice, but that works. So the desktop itself, it's packaged in WIP, as I mentioned. It's a few packages now. There is a file manager, the browser, window manager, which I'm not using here because it's not mature enough, text editor, web browser, telephony application, the stylus that I just mentioned, support, emulation, PDF viewer, something for setting up the volumes and so on. And so there are two versions of almost each of these applications. It's the same code, just some parts are disabled, like the menu bars and so on. And when you want to compile all of these for embedded devices, you have to set special value, special option in mk.conf, which is embedded. Pretty self-explaining. So if you want to start the desktop, it's as simple as this. You just create a X clients file, and GDM is going to catch up, at least if it's set up properly. So you just declare the GTK stylus module. You can run whichever other application you want. Here I added some SSH agent, but it's not necessary, of course. Clipit is a nice handler for the clipboard, which is not part of this, but also interesting when you want to cut and paste with just one finger. It's really useful to go through different buffers. And then, of course, there is the desktop, DHCPD GTK for networking, which I'm going to explain a bit later. Locker is a screensaver, the panel, the telephony solution if you have a modem, and then the window manager, of course. So this is how the screensaver looks like right now. And even better, maybe I could show it live running here. And so basically, it's transparent, and it should be moving. The background should be moving. Maybe it's not showing now. I don't know. Doesn't matter. Next slide. Integration. So it's also, I managed to find ways to integrate with PowerD on NetBSD. So it means if I, maybe I could try that live. Okay, this is how I unlock the screensaver, by the way. Just picture I would use a finger instead. Yeah, like an iPhone or whatever you use. What did I want to show? The notifications. Yes, if I do this. Okay, it's displayed here on this screen. I'm going to kill my own panel on my own screen. Feel my wrath. Yes, okay, and now again. No. Okay, just a sec. Maybe they were competing for the messages. So if I do that now. Okay, still not. You'll have to trust my screenshot on this one. But it's pretty cool. I have modified the script slightly. And for each and every PowerD event, I have like a notification on the panel, and it involves no dbus, no HAL, no whatever. It's just a function call, a helper binary, and it's just sending a small window using XSembed protocol inside the panel, and it's quite nice, I think. So after that, If I switch here, no. Networking, let's move on to networking. So I used a nice little trick here. Since I'm talking to the modem already with the AT commands and everything, I didn't want to call chat to connect to the regular network because I'm already chatting. So I'm calling PPPD in PTY mode. It just needs a small configuration files like this. You can configure the APN access point and everything for GPRS inside the preferences directly, and it just works. You press connect, and it's connecting you to the network. So I think that's quite nice too. I integrated resolve-conf this way with 2 small scripts, as documented anyway in PPPD manual. Then Wi-Fi is also supported with the finger interface. So basically, Roy Maples, also another NetBSD developer, wrote a small GTK application to interface with his THCP daemon, and it works quite nice. It doesn't see any network here, which is really surprising. So I cannot show anything, but you can basically enter WPA keys, choose which network you want to connect to, just with the finger and the virtual keyboard, which is also very neat, quite nice. And to set this up, you will need to start WPS applicant, to enable configuration updates inside the configuration file, and run DHCP-CD, of course, this way. The flags for DHCP-CD make it go directly into the background and keep it quiet so that it doesn't wait for carrier or whatever. It's just gaining a bit of boot time here, which is also interesting. GPS support now. Actually, the GPS chip is on the same device as the 3G chip. It's just showing a total of 4 TTY lines over USB, so you have to actually add 2 more to the default ones. But after that, in theory, you can enable the quickly hacked GPS plugin in DeforaOS phone, click start in the interface, and it will send an AT command to the modem, which will enable the GPS data to be sent over the other descriptors. And then you set up GPSD and, for instance, Foxtrot GPS. But I cannot show it now because it just breaks directly. Like if you try to start it, it will send the core, dump a core directly. So more work is required for GPS support, but it shouldn't be too hard, I hope. So hardware support in general, the camera is supported, the touchscreen is supported, the hardware is multi-touch, but the driver is only single touch. The modem does 3G with the U3G driver. There are some issues. Interestingly, I got UDP packets to go by, so I can resolve names. With this device, with other devices, everything is fine. But TCP doesn't work. I mean, that's my diagnosis so far. I only tried web browsing. So maybe there's something else, like my MTU values, or I don't know what I have to investigate. Wireless support is working. I tried yesterday here on the network, and it did work. It doesn't right now. It doesn't see any network. The video driver works now to some extent. I would have wanted to show off a bit and use it to, like, for the presentation, but the HDMI output is not recognized by the driver, and there is no HDMI cable anyway. But it should work. There is an HDMI output, mini HDMI port, and I hope this will be supported sometime. So as I mentioned, the GPS needs more work. Power management is getting there, but I still have trouble suspending because you need to be root, basically, and you need to enter a syscontrol on NetBSD. So I would really like it to have a binary for this, which I could set user ID, like ZZZ, like on other distributions, and to be able to just call that, and it would just work. There would be just a menu entry for suspending, and that would be like fairly straightforward after that. And of course, there is a lot more to polish, but I think that's quite okay. I can even let you guys have a look around if you want. You can even look for bugs inside the virtual keyboard, which I didn't mention here, but don't be surprised if you find them. So in the future, there will be a picture of a skate overboard here. I do not have one yet because it's in the future. And the future exists. Okay, the picture doesn't look really nice this way, but yeah, it doesn't matter. So the feature has potential. It has potential for more devices support. And this is a picture of this device running NetBSD. And I think if I just start it now, it should also boot into the kernel in a few seconds. So that's really cool. We could have an open source phone running NetBSD. Yeah. So yeah, basically it should just, yeah, it's reading UIMage, NetBSD, N900. It's an RC1 on this one. I will have to get really close to the camera for it to catch up. You have a good zoom. To be fair, it's not my work. It's a friend who just tried if it would work with the OMAP support, and it worked directly. So it's really cool. There is no root system right now. I tried to put a RAM disk, but it's not starting it. So I have to investigate what's going on, where it's breaking or not. But it's really nice to have like this working. I really love this hardware. It's really neat, even if it's sadly not made anymore, I think. But maybe a phone next time for my next presentation, in a not too distant future, I hope. Other than that, so if you're interested into DeforaOS, I'm moving it at the moment on GitHub. So I'm between CVS and Git. I prefer CVS, but people prefer Git. So I have users now, yay. So they prefer that I move to Git. So I'm currently learning, hopefully very fast, about Git. So things are a bit shuffling right now. So about DeforaOS, I want to make it happen. It's going to be good, I hope. But more realistically, the first thing I could do maybe is switch to GTK3. Almost everything already compiles with GTK3 and runs, but I haven't tried yet if finger scrolling works or if there is anything I could enable to make it better. And like the desktop has some tricks with Xshape extension, which is not supported by GTK3, but other than that, it should be no problem. Sometimes I just use it, but it doesn't look as polished, just because I didn't set up GTK properly anyway. But, so for now, you can, as I mentioned, have a look at the DeforaOS project on defora.org. NetBSD is still on netbsd.org since '95. I hope it will not move anytime soon. My consulting stuff is over there, and you can find myself on Twitter @Corben, KH, or on my personal homepage on peopledefora/Corben. And so, before I ask for any questions, I thank you a lot for bearing with me and listening. And I hope you will all have an opportunity to see the tablet, see how it looks like. And so feel free to just meet me, have a drink, whatever works. Come on. Okay, so how do I unbreak it? Oh, you rotated it. Okay. Maybe I can cheat.
I'm sorry.
No, that's all right. That's fair game. I have a keyboard, a real one. Yeah, I have to debug sometimes. I mean, I like difficult stuff, but at some point, it's just too much. And to be fair, I bought it only last week, after months of like, I need a keyboard. Okay, so I can switch to another console, log in. It's too bad I cannot put this on screen. And I have a helper binary to unrotate the screen. So if things are working okay, and I remember this name. This is like a QWERTY layout on a German keyboard. I hate that, but I had no choice. Where's the equal sign? And it's not a regular one. I mean, the keys are shuffled. I found it. Okay, display :1. No, not here, not this. Yes. Okay, and now was it desktop control? Let's see if it works. And back to the regular display. 5. It didn't. Too bad for me. Well, I can reboot it. It's booting very fast anyway. I mean. So who is the next one?
Yeah, don't give it back to me.
Any-
No, don't.
Okay, the queue goes backward. Yeah, yeah. Yeah? Is it starting already? Otherwise, the button is on the back, right here. Yeah, it should start now. So any questions?
Does it have an accelerometer in it? Is that
Yes, it does.
auto-rotate?
Yeah. I didn't implement it, but it has the hardware, and there is just no driver for it. Or maybe it's done with a CPI, or I didn't check. It's the next step, or one of the next steps. Yeah.
What are the challenges with the multi-touch and like gestures and stuff?
I didn't want to think too much about this because it looks fairly difficult. Okay, so on the driver side, it's fairly easy because you can just report events, basically. I think that's how Linux does. Of course, it would be nicer to have sort of an intermediate framework with gestures and whatever, to have the same behavior in the console and X and everything, even if I don't see, oh yes, my code. Or you can also just skip it. Yeah. Oh, the same bug as before. Don't look. Yeah. So okay, so basically, sometimes Matchbox is not nice and hides the bottom panel, which is where you launch applications, and that's not cool. So I have a special plugin for my Screensaver, which I'm abusing. So if I lock screen and get back to the interface, it displays the panel again because Matchbox doesn't like so much Windows Screensaver stuff. So sometimes it displayed the Screensaver with the two panels staying, and you could still like enter commands and everything, which is not very secure. So I added a plugin to hide the panel, and then it pops back up when it's resuming from unlocking. And therefore, here it does, and it works. Yeah. So it can move again. Hopefully make it through a few more lines. And
Did you buy one of these and how much?
I bought it on Amazon, I think, Amazon DE. And it's a small German company, originally shipping it with MiGo. I forgot to mention that. So it's already Linux-based at the beginning, with, I think, almost all of the hardware support implemented. This one has a firmware. It has no BIOS. You can also find derivatives of this hardware with different names, like ExoPC, which has a BIOS, abusing the mouse driver to actually access the BIOS menus with the finger. It really works. I was amazed. I have a friend who just let me use his a while ago. And so I think it's still possible to obtain it. And it cost me around 300 euros, I think, like 6 months ago, which is quite fair, I think, for this hardware. So it's x86, easy to hack on, and yeah. I wish there would be more open ARM tablets, modern ones, which I could use, but maybe it's going to be later also.
Do you battery life?
I didn't really test it because it was often connected, because I was like obviously working a bit long on it, but the vendor says 6 hours. I would say it's more around 4 if you have the Java support for power management and everything. And in my case, as I don't really have any power management, it's more like 2 maybe. But I didn't really try to exhaust it. Yeah.
Because usually the CPU uses advanced power saving modes and
Yeah.
special things to enter them.
Well, I have speed step implemented, and it's even displaying on screen the frequency and stuff. But other than that, I didn't look into anything specific so far. Just making sure that none of my applications uses 100% CPU. Like, I usually write single threaded code with the glib event integration, like catching, well, integrating with select or pull, depending on how it's done, and that's it. Yeah?
Is there anything stopping you moving the packages into package starts for main rather than work in progress?
No, there isn't. I just should ask for review, basically. And I just find it more interesting to code than to ask for review. But I should do it at some point. No, it's a very good question. And actually, Olivier right here, who didn't say much during the talk, is packaging everything for FreeBSD. And I think we are just a keystroke away from pushing it into the regular ports for FreeBSD. It's also, I have scripts to package it for Debian. Some stuff is still in Hackable 1, but it's really old versions. But I have almost everything ready to package it for Debian too. And well, for NetBSD, it's there. Every time I release, I try to package in RIP directly. And I also have scripts for this now, so I have no excuse. Yeah. Sorry, you? Yeah, yeah. Please. And if you do it for me, so much the better. I mean.
You test drivers in NetBSD 5 through now as well. I did follow.
It should work in NetBSD 5. I'm not sure if there was a pull-up for the touchscreen driver.
Yes, there was.
But was it accepted? I don't remember.
Yeah, I did follow.
Oh, you did it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. And the person who requested the follow-up did the commit back.
Yes. Yeah, I remember, and I forgot to do that, and I was like, oh, cool. Like, and for 386 also, I think I had only done AMD 64, and like, I think there is also hardware which supports 32 bits and only 32 bits and has the same touchscreens, because it's a fairly common chipset actually, or the specifications are open.
Oh, I just got a 21-inch widescreen touchscreen out of the box, plugged it in, it works straight away. Calibration is absolutely perfect.
Cool.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Anything else?
Except I couldn't right-click.
You couldn't?
I couldn't right-click.
Oh yeah, but if it's GTK based, maybe you could like add this small module. It's just a few dozen lines of code actually. I'm considering importing it to DeforaOS directly so that I don't have to input another package, and it's not maintained anymore. It was part of GPE, and I think there were no updates for 6 years. So I'm not the first doing this kind of interface, but what I know so far is mostly unmaintained, the public stuff anyway. Yeah. I like the look and feel, and I really like C in the first place. And if you want to do user interfaces with C, native modes, I think GTK is okay. It's very verbose, you have to type very long function names and everything, but other than that, it's really flexible and very efficient. I don't use Glade or anything like that, I just do everything manually. Well, now I have my habits, so I just can copy and paste and modify, and I have a small library for the really common stuff like building menus and everything. And it also allows me, therefore, to do nice tricks. Like I think if I try again on Mac, I could just tell my menu bar helper to display the menu bar inside the top panel, and it would be just like a native application. I haven't tried that yet, but it should work. Yeah, that would be cool. Other than that, I'm trying to follow XDG when I can. So the application menus are compatible with XDG. So all this is the regular screensaver. I can show a bit more of the interface on screen. So yes, it moves, as you can see. Nice. Where's my mouse? Yes, okay. And bye-bye. So the menu is here. Slight bug with, here is Metacity, because Matchbox was too much of a pain. So here are the menus. Right here, it's only the stuff that's in my user local directory, because this is not packaged. It's my development box. But there is like a media player. And if I maximize it, well, here it's because of mPlayer, because I delegate the window to mPlayer, but before displaying any movie, it's just not doing anything. So it's just garbage. But other than that, I even have like the volume meter here, and you can switch to full screen mode and everything. This is the embedded version. Yeah. So no menu bar, but like the bigger toolbar and so on. The preferences are here. Well, right now there isn't much, and thanks to the bug reports, there is something now. In the first place, there is I could show the file browser, which is quite nice. So here, I will not let you see my files. So it can switch view. It keeps the selection, of course. It does previews. Like if I go into user somewhere, and of course this is also handy when you're using fingers. I can show something really cool. As you can see, it says CVS here. Okay, so, or actually even better, I will use the cheat one. So home, projects, type it here. No? There should be a bit directory. Yeah. Okay, this is not a JIT one, but if I go inside, it should be here. Okay, it recognizes that this is a repository, and just by writing a small plugin, 300 lines inside the file manager, I can have a JIT client. Because it's all modular, and it works the same way for CVS, but I'm not connected to the network here, so it doesn't make sense. But yeah, I can just ask for the logs for this directory and so on, commit, pull. It's very simple right now, so we not do as much as the command line with Git. But I think it's pretty nice to be able to have like something new with just integrating inside regular software. And like it has a properties pane. If I maximize it, is it maximized? Well, yeah, it's made because of the icons on the desktop and everything. So if I scroll down, okay, it's not scrolling also, but yeah, I can change properties, listing everything, copy and paste the file name. It has preview mode. So if I open like a text file, it displays it here. I want to do the same with tail, to have like something to show log files. You just click on your log file and you have it on a pane. It displays pictures too. You can directly open the application that's registered for it. Here it's a viewer. Here it's the text editor. Of course, it's using this text editor or the one you want when you commit in Git or whatever. So you don't even have to like enter VI or whatever. You can just like enter this directly. Don't know what else I can show. I have a mail client. I have other telephony stuff. Well, here it's not going to work, except if I use the debugging stuff, but it's not interesting. Yeah, so the screensaver can be also configured here. It should yeah. So it has different backends, GTK demo. You can integrate with X screensaver. You can put a command in the background with Xterm. It also supports plugins, like the one to save my ass when Matchbox screws with me. This prevents suspending, which is really useful when you are you have a charger connected and you don't want the phone to go into suspend mode. As currently my screensaver is taking care of that. This just prevents suspending when the phone is charging or the device or whatever. This is just a template one. Openmoko also has some special tricks for the special USB devices that Openmoko has. Debugging module, yeah, authentication can be done with password also. So you have no excuse to use it now. And yeah, the slider mode for finger-based interaction. I can also show this. There are many applets available for the panel. All of this. Just stop me when there is no time left. I mean, okay, cool. So you can just decide in which panel you want to have what and shift it around. Like you have the Wi-Fi before the spacer, which just stretches things so that it aligns on the right side. You can choose which command is called when you lock the screen, if you want to show the battery level or not, like in text. The keyboard, the virtual keyboard, I haven't showed the virtual keyboard here, is also interesting. So there are different modes. This is one of them. And if I shift to the, like, this, you can input stuff here. Of course, here it's not very practical because the window manager is not meant to be embedded. But normally it would, like, resize the GTK application automatically because it's a dock. And you'd be able to enter a command, to enter keystrokes.
Will it also pop the keyboard up when you enter a text field?
I wish I had that, but it's not working yet. I mean, I would have to patch TTK for this, maybe another module or something, but it's something I want to, yeah. And it already exists for the original distribution of this phone, which is called Memo, and it was based on GTK, and it had this feature. So maybe it's in the part that was open source. I don't know, I hope. Could have a look. And the keyboard also works standalone. It should be in utilities here, and it's a separate window. Okay, I want it to go away. Yeah, so you also have it here. And it does pop up when you click on keys. So there are currently, it's not very modular, this one. It has 3 different layouts. And when you hit like shift, it switches to the other representation. And you can hold control, you can hold alt, and so on, delete. Well, it's almost everything is there from a regular keyboard. Function keys, and if you press shift, you have F12, and so on. And actually, this one, when you close it, it stays here, and you can just show it again, or tell it to go away. Yeah. And this is just a regular sys-tray, like GNOME compliant and everything. This is what I wanted to show you earlier with the PowerD integration. It should show up here. And oh, I can maybe show something neat. If I start terminal. OK, so in NetBSD, there is something pretty cool, which is the progress helper. So basically, you take a file. I will force it to be user bin progress. OK, you choose a file, like FTP, pub, NetBSD, blah, blah, blah. Let's take comp because it's big. OK, and you say something like this, and it shows a nice like progress bar. OK, I have done the same. It's in GTK. OK, this is not over. Now I have added an extra flag, which is -x. And now I can choose panel embed, and it should display up there in the background. So you can have your scripts, have your progress indication on screen. It doesn't disturb you. You see what's going on. And I'm using this when I create CH routes or whatever in the background. It's just like telling me what's going on, and when it's over, I know it. And it's pretty neat, and it works for a few applications. I think maybe the volume mixer. I think I did it, -x. Ah, no, this is still progress. Yeah, so you can change the volume here, just temporarily, and when you're done, well, you close it. Or the PowerD stuff, what it does is it uses panel message, and you just say like, go away after 5 seconds, tell me something, except it's gonna break. Well, I will just remove this one. And yeah, so this is an info bar. I can also make it an arrow. So yeah, you can also integrate with this, and it will just display a message over there, and it's also pretty nice. So if you detect if there is the display environment set, you can just like use these helpers, and if not, stay in the console and everything. So yeah, I have a set of functions for that. And I mean, I like to integrate with desktop and to have visual feedback on what I do. And here with just a few like tricks, simple ones, try to stay with the Unix philosophy. I do all of this without using dbus or whichever other like heavy message passing subsystems, which I think are not really necessary in many cases. So yeah, that's my my fight. Okay, is there anything you want to see specifically? Yeah, okay, timeouts, shutdown. Thanks for listening.